Well, college football season's over, and just like last year, it picks up with conference realignment talk all over the place. Doesn't matter where you look, where you read, whether it's CBS Sports, Sports Illustrated, on any YouTube channel that does college football, you hear all this realignment. This team's going there, that team's going over here, and it's all speculation. It's all speculation. But we brought in Tony with us tonight. Mark's got the night off. I'm kind of like just filling in for Mark, and we're going to have this show tonight. But we brought in Tony, our numbers guys, got some great charts for us to go over, and we also brought in Tide Guy, who has always talks to Tony and learns all this stuff and has a unique perspective on all of it. But we welcome everybody in tonight. Hey, if you will, before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button. If you're not a subscriber of this channel, hit subscribe. And if you're watching this show later, after the live, be sure and leave a comment down below. That always helps the algorithms and helps get the video out a little bit further. But we thank everybody for being here. Tony, how's it going, buddy?
Going great. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Been waiting for this show since me and you discussed it yesterday, and me and you and Ty Guy were talking about this and things. So, Ty Guy, you doing good, buddy?
I am. I'm actually enjoying the last week hearing, all the nonsense and all the wild.
So much nonsense
happened, and oh no, you're wrong. This is going to happen, because everybody knows that a university is going to do whatever they can to make an extra $1 million for their football team.
Right. So we have all this talk, and we have, especially the big talk is the Pac-12. Obviously, what are they going to do? Expand, or are the four corners going to go to the Big 12? Everybody talking Arizona State's going to the Big 12. Brent Yormark's on record in the Big 12 as saying that he's headed west for some teams. So, what do you see happening, Tony, with this conference realignment? I know that that's kind of a general question, but I'm gonna let you kind of kick this off where you want to, because you're the numbers guy.
Sure. Well, first of all, I mean, obviously anything could happen. And when we talk tonight, we're going to talk about things sort of on a spectrum, and we're going to try to be clear in where we are in the spectrum between things that we know are going to happen, things that we project are going to happen, things that we predict or expect, all the way to what we recommend, all the way to maybe what we wish. And one of the things that we want to be sure we're doing is we're talking about things using the right words. So, for example, when I say I wish that the Big Ten would add Harvard and Penn, I'm not saying that we predict that will happen. There are other things that we are predicting that we know and that we project. And I think project, if you follow election coverage, project is the strongest word they use in election coverage. And when they say they project a winner, that means that they have analyzed the situation, they have numbers back, they have information, and they are projecting something to happen. So, why don't we talk real quick about, on our Pac-12 chat show, we have done a couple of projections. Our first projection, which is most important, is we have on pretty solid authority, and Tide Guy, if you can validate this, that there will be no new additions to the Southeastern Conference in the short to medium term.
Exactly. Yeah, the SEC is not expanding. We're going to stay back at 16 to see how Texas and OU fit in.
So any discussion about the SEC is, aliens landing on the moon type level of speculation. I mean, it can be fun, right? Like our good friend who we all love, Golden Blue Dude, literally has a whole channel that is just, kind of fun, wild stuff. And that's okay. But we're acknowledging that nothing is happening with the SEC.
Right.
Second would be the Big Ten. The Big Ten presidents have been very, very, very clear that there will be no further expansion of the Big Ten in the short to medium term.
Unless Notre Dame wakes up tomorrow. Notre Dame would be the only exception.
What'd you say? Exactly. Yeah. Notre Dame. Yeah. If Notre Dame has said they're not going. Yeah. If Notre Dame wants to join the Big Ten TV contracts we know are specifically designed to include Notre Dame.
Right.
Well, so I think Notre Dame's the exception to every conference rule. So, like the SEC, even if Notre Dame says I want the SEC, they're in tomorrow. So.
Yeah, that's true, and it's not it's not happening probably, but that Ty Guy, good point. That's always an exception. So, assuming that Notre Dame doesn't go crazy in the next whatever, the Big Ten is not looking to add anyone else in the short to medium term. I don't know what exactly we consider short term to be. I would consider it to be like a year or two, and the medium term to be probably, the life of the contract, the life of the media contract are probably about 5 years. Let's call it 5.
It's funny,
I would
Tony,
say
because we
20,
discussed that a
28.
little bit. We all discussed that a little bit yesterday about how Notre Dame has kind of held up this whole conference realignment thing for everybody, to make everybody. I think there's a reason for all this speculation in a lot of ways, because they won't make a move. They want to stay independent. And
at the same time, that's like saying that like Brooke Shields is holding up, your dating life.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Brooke Shields has no idea who you are. Right. So that's the one caveat. Joe, you're right. Joe, you're totally right. And Notre Dame knows that they are the prettiest girl at the ball that everyone wants to dance with. But at the same time, Notre Dame's like, I'm not actually trying to dance with any of you. But I appreciate that you've kept your dance card open, but I'm not here to dance with any of you guys.
The problem with Notre Dame also is Notre Dame does not care about the money. They're not the typical team. It's ego. Notre Dame has an ego, and that's what drives them. They don't care about losing money in the athletic department, or not losing, but not gaining as much by going to the Big Ten. And going to the Big Ten would help them. But
yeah, they'd make more.
So much history, they don't care about that. And that's the problem.
And we're going to talk more about this on another show with Mark, but Notre Dame's history of why they're not in conference is because they were excluded for so long.
Yeah.
And then at some point they decided that was a good thing, despite they've been trying to join the Big Ten for years. John says San Diego State with Fresno State, right? SMU. Thank you for your contribution. We appreciate it. It helps a lot. We're going to talk, John, hold that thought, because we're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a sec. But we wanted to first there are a couple of baselines we want to lay here on what we're expecting before we get into the more fun stuff. So we said Big Ten, no move on the SEC, no movement on the Big Ten. We are also projecting that there will be no true additions to the ACC in the short term. I don't know if you guys saw today, the ACC had discussions at their meetings. They are looking at a model probably very similar to what the Pac-12 used for about 60 years or 50 years of unequal revenue sharing based on more money if you win more. Certainly if they do something like that over the short term or medium term, that will help solidify them. But first and foremost, again, so no new teams in the Big Ten, no new teams in the SEC, no new teams in the ACC. Now we have actually a bit of a projection, and that is our Pac-12 chat show has officially projected that we expect in the very, very, very short term, probably in the next, next week, next month, the Pac-12 will expand, and that will include SDSU, San Diego State University, and Southern Methodist. It is not officially announced. We believe that the actions of the presidents, we believe that the PR handling of it, and we believe that from what we've heard confirmed from people who know these things, that will happen. Again, we're not telling you that we have their secret inside emails, but we are, just like the news people project election winners, we are projecting officially that those teams will join the Pac-12, and that the current 10 members of the Pac-12 will also remain in the Pac-12. That's an important distinction. So that's the big thing with the Pac-12. Now with the Big 12, as you guys know, also had a big announcement this week. They announced that Texas and Oklahoma will officially be leaving the conference after this year, and that their sort of new state will take over in 2024. So bravo to the Big 12 on that.
I'm happy. Good riddance to Texas, really, in the Big 12.
Now,
So,
Joey,
I hate to see Oklahoma leave. I really do, but Texas does not bother me a bit.
Joey, was that because of the basketball game today, or was it?
Yeah, well, that's part of it. That's for sure. West Virginia forgot to show up today, buddy. So, and that's
I'm sorry.
No, I mean, it's a great football game every year. Obviously, West Virginia and Texas are tied 6-6 in the Big 12. It's a great football game. It's a great basketball game too. I mean, we're pretty even in basketball as well. But the problems that they bring to the Big 12 every year, and I get so tired of every preseason seeing them ranked so much higher than everyone else, and then finishing at the bottom. So. But every year they're going to be 15-0. So,
Joey, I don't understand. What is this round orange thing you guys are taking indoors?
Yeah.
As a USC Trojan, we have no idea what that thing is.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what that is. We don't know anything about that.
Ask your cousins across the street there. Ask your cousins across the street. They know a little bit about it.
I think they know. I think our cousins down the street know that pretty well. Good to have you, Gumby. We got Gumby here. SMU going to make a smooth move.
Shout out to the chat. Let's shout out the chat real quick, everybody that's here. We appreciate everyone being here. And do me a favor, if you would, share this stream with just a friend. Just right now, we've got roughly 80 people in here. If we all share it with somebody, we could have 160 in here in 5 minutes. So, Christian, thanks for being here. Jason is here with us. Appreciate you too. Huffer Billy Paul, thank you for being here today, buddy. Gumby, Jackson Johnson's here. Project Dynasty, Mike Fort. Going down through here, QXZ, thanks for being here. Appreciate you being here today. And Mike Fort, like I said, here, we appreciate you, Mike, always. Glad you're here. Going down through here, Yvette's here with us as well. Thanks for being here with us today, Yvette. And A-Mac says, is this going to be another hatchet job on the Big 12? We just had one of those earlier this week. Why another so soon? Well, I'm here, so I won't let him put down the Big 12.
Yeah, we're not hatching. We are being clear that the Pac-12 teams will not be going to the Big 12. That is our projection.
Tim's here as well. Thanks for being here, Tim. One of our fearless moderators down there, and so make sure you're at your best P's and Q's because you don't want him to time you out. So, and of course, everybody's favorite, the real MVP is here. So. Hey, if I missed you in the chat, I apologize. We do appreciate you being here. Be sure and hit the like button. If you're not a member of this channel, be sure and hit subscribe. If you're not a subscriber, rather, and everything. We'll get back to this talk. So, we're talking about all this. And I think another thing that we have to bring in is the fact that this conference realignment talk that everybody's got going on every channel across YouTube about Arizona State's leaving and going to the Big 12. It's the big news, right? It's what everybody talks about. Arizona State is out and they're going to the Big 12. What about the money wise there? I mean, let's look at money difference between, like, Colorado left the Big 12, went to the Pac-12. What did that do for their money?
Well,
Tony?
Before Tony gives you the numbers, can I say something about this? Because I think that people need to understand there's three things for a university. There's the fans, and what the fans want, they're the ones chirping to make most of this. Now, we all agree that there's athletic directors, and what the athletic director wants is different a lot of times than what the president wants. So even though the athletic director, let's say, and I'm not saying this is the case, but the athletic director might be, hey, I'd rather be over here. And, they're talking about that, but that's not necessarily what the president wants. So you're hearing from the fans, and you're getting a lot of what the fans want and the reality. And there might be a little grumbling with lower level employees at Arizona State, or the athletic director wishes they could do this or wishes they could do that. But it's the president that controls everything. And that's where a lot of people in chats forget that it's not all about sports, these conference realignments, like we want it to be. It's about, the total picture. And unfortunately, the total picture athletics makes up a small portion of the budget for these universities. And Tony will give you the numbers.
Yeah, let's just baseline why, and thank you to John for that. Replacing, you said it's about moving on. Very true. You are right, John. It is about moving on. Let's just very quickly just look at a couple of data pieces, and we've looked at these before. These are actually from something we did on the show a long time ago, talking about the Big 12. Actually, this is looking at athletic departments. So when people talk about the Big 12, it's such a better athletic department for Arizona State, it's actually really not. They have fewer sports. Arizona State has a huge athletic department. A lot of the Big 12 teams don't have that many sports. Olympic medals, which is very important to Arizona State. They want to have athletes in the Olympics. The Big 12 is not the place for that. Neither is the ACC. They lag in team national championships. I mean, Arizona State's really big. Like their triathlon team just won the national championship. They're pushing for all that. Just it's not really what happens in the Big 12. As far as football goes, their 5-year football program rank was lower than the Pac-12, as was their average weeks ranked in the AP poll. We do know that Iowa State has better barbecue at their tailgates, but that is not something that's a priority for university presidents. But a couple things that are priority for university presidents are resources and scale. So money, funding, research. These are things that are tremendously important to universities. For example, Arizona State does $760 or something last year, $760 or something million in research. No school in the Big 12 even comes close to that. In fact, it's almost triple the second or third school in the Big 12. Endowments are tremendously important to university administrators. That is not something that really happens much in the Big 12. Annual giving, like bringing in donations. So Arizona State, for example, brought in $330 million last year. The average Big 12 school only brings in $92 million. So fundraising is really important. And where you play football affects your fundraising. You want to play around your alumni. Arizona State's alumni are in Southern California and Northern California and Arizona. They're not in Ames and Lubbock and even Morgan. Joey, how many ASU stickers do you guys see in Morgantown?
Yeah, I have never seen one.
There you go. They're not. He's not going to fundraise at Arizona State. In fact, one of the main reasons for adding San Diego State is to have that presence in Southern California. That's why it's a no-brainer. So anybody that's telling you that Arizona State doesn't want San Diego State in there is an absolute moron, because it is incredibly important for Arizona State to fundraise there. Now, there might be some random junior athletic department staffer who will send an email to, Mr. Big Ten friend or, whoever that some random ass columnist has. But as far as Arizona State's people that matter, fundraising matters tremendously to Arizona State. Research matters tremendously to Arizona State. And those are things that they're not really strengths of the Big 12. I mean, look here, annual research funding. So this number is actually kind of bad because Cal is so weird. If you go back to the way Cal splits up its units, a lot of them don't count in here. If you properly count Cal, they are actually higher than the Big Ten. But it's just because Cal is just giant in terms of the research. So there's some caveats there. So this is Cal, like Cal Light, like Cal, part of Cal. But you see, it's triple the Big 12. And just as far as size goes, this is the other thing that people don't realize. The Pac-12 schools have massive budgets. Washington's total budget is $9.2 billion. So this, they're right now, this whole debate about, is the Pac-12 not going to get as much as they want? Yeah, probably not. It'll probably be about $8 million lower than they hoped. They wanted like 40. They're probably going to get like 32. So that $8 million, I actually said to somebody today on Twitter, I said, I hope that you are as worried about every 0.0087% budget deviation for the University of Washington as you are for this one, because it's not a lot of money. But the Big 12 schools are smaller, and so that it's more money to them. So as we talk about
a
research,
comment real quick here, Tony. So I see a comment here from DeReal who says, "Watch athletics, not academics."
Then you should watch the NFL tomorrow and not college football.
Yeah, because it's all about academics. These universities care about academics above anything else.
The C stands for college.
Yeah,
that's the C. So if you're not interested in that, also if this is really boring to you, then this is not the stream to watch. So
I'll tell you
what
the problem is like
okay,
when you say watch academics, I think you're saying that people watch academics like the country watches people play football and basketball, but they don't watch. They could care less about the academics of the school, and that might be true. But when you're on the board at the school, you care about the academics. You could care less about the football program. You could care less about that. That doesn't move the needle because there's so much money involved in athletics.
Well, the big thing
that
though,
little
you want to be good at everything you do.
right.
Okay.
But
And that includes sports. You want to be really good at sports. You want to be really good at research. You want to be bring the best undergrad students. You want to have the best honors program. You want to have the best alumni engagement. You want to have the best of everything is what's important. And
but I mean, the money don't move a needle though. The money is not pushing these universities. The money in football is not pushing these universities to the conferences. What's pushing them is the academics of these conferences. So
for example, look at this. These are research totals. Now, if we correct Cal, if we standardize Cal and Texas Tech, by the way, Texas Tech also gets shorted. So we fixed Texas Tech in here to give them more money as well. So this is a little better picture. The blank we screwed up. The blank one is actually the Big West. You see the Big West. I make jokes on the Big West. The Big West does $1 billion of research more than the Big 12. You know, again, you're looking here. You see. I mean, Colorado does $1 billion of research, or 1.1 or whatever $1 billion of research, all on their own. The entire Big 12 does 2.6. Colorado's research is up $300 million since they joined the Pac-12. That again, $300 million a year more. Like, they're not looking to downgrade academically; they're looking to stay or upgrade. And there's no, you could argue the Big Ten's an upgrade. For anybody, because a lot of things in the Big Ten academically, but they're just the money that matters is in the Pac-12, and so again, you're not going to see institutions downgrading over a couple bucks here or there. Now, for example, the SEC might be different. If the SEC, which they're not going to. If the SEC called Oregon and said, Oregon, would you like to join the SEC? Maybe, yeah, that would be like an extra $50 million a year. That would move the needle. And look at the SEC. The SEC is full of flagship institutions like Oregon. Again, not going to happen. That's a silly example. That's why we're using it. But, you know, if the Big Ten or SEC, who are not adding people, we're going to, that would be transformative money. A couple $1 million here, a couple $1 million there. Nobody's trading the hundreds of millions of dollars we're talking about here for a nickel of nonsense from Ames. It's just not happening. It's like, yeah, actually, TV viewership is driven by universities, which are driven by brand, and the big brand universities tend to be the better ones. Look at the Big Ten. Look at the SEC. Look at the Pac-12. It's the flagship universities that people watch. So. What is it? Your glasses. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. You're too kind. Thank you, John. You are too kind. You're a person of the night.
Okay, Tony. Let me mention something about the last one though. About athletics. You know, look at the SEC. In the last go around, Missouri was not going to be added to the SEC. ESPN stepped in and said, "Add Missouri. It'll move the number." But in the 10 years. What ESPN thought of 10 years ago, they don't think of as much today. So viewership is not as big of a driving force today as it was 10 years ago. Now, the thing with the Big Ten, and the biggest reason why the Big Ten makes more money than any other conference is, like Tony just said, they grab the LA market. Well, guess what? USC's in the LA market. So they got lots of viewers, lots of alum. And so that helps. But when you take an SMU, because it's Dallas, it's not really for the viewerships. They're taking it because of the academics and
the market.
You know, but the academics are important. You're not going to just take any school because they're in. You know, we're not going to take the University of Phoenix, you know. I mean, come on. It just won't happen.
And I mean, the thing is people, one of the things we've talked about, and we talked about this in the other show. I don't want to repeat what we talked about the other day ad nauseum. But one of the things we talked about the other day is since the SEC was founded in 1932, every single team that the SEC has added was either an AAU member and or a state flagship institution. So, like, this stuff matters a lot to the SEC.
Yeah, we
And I
like
mean,
to play dumb. We
yeah,
play dumb. Oh shucks, we're just a football school. But yeah, I mean, like Tony said, look at who we've added, and honestly, look where we're at on this spectrum. Most people wouldn't think the SEC
equal to the
is
Ivy
this
League.
high in academics, and we are.
I mean, you have more teams in the Ivy League, but you're pretty much equal to the Ivy League.
Right.
Can we go back a couple of slides, Tony, to the one with the six? It had the 6 square blocks in it that talked about the Olympics,
Sports ones?
the sports. Yes, there we go. With it right there. So the average varsity sports, Olympic sports, team national championships. I look at this and I think, okay, this is what makes the autonomous 5, right? This is what makes a Power 5 status. It's all these categories. Am I correct in saying that?
I mean, so the Power 5 status actually comes from the NCAA, and it's actually not Power 5, it's actually A5. It means autonomous. Right. And it's a special designation the NCAA has given to the 5 conferences that have the right, essentially the right to make their own rules. So, for example, one of the things the SEC has talked about is maybe they want to put headsets in their quarterbacks' helmets. Like, the rule says you can't do that, but they have autonomous powers that would let them do that if they wanted. Yeah. That's just one.
But I mean, there's a difference between the AAC or Sun Belt or Mountain West.
Yeah, it's a dramatic difference. I mean, right. Again, and you see, but you see that not just in sports. I mean, you see it in recent. Look at the fall off here. You see it starts to fall off. In fact, the AAC, if it were not for UAB, which is really just Alabama's med school, which actually arguably should be under SEC. Alabama and Cal are both weird in how they like give other people like for example, you see the huge thing for UC Davis. It used to be called University Farm. That's Cal's ag and vet school. So like there's lots of things in this money, guys, that like, you know, is a little bit more interesting. But Alabama should be much higher because Alabama's med school is at UAB, and you see all that money on UAB. But you start to see the fall off from the AAC to the Mountain West to the MAC, for example, are all very, very small research schools, except for Buffalo, which is a flagship school of the state of New York.
But what my point is like when a Power 5 team pulls from, let's just say like Big 12 pulled Cincinnati and UCF and Houston, right? When they pulled from them and things, they could do that because they're a Power 5, and it automatically elevates those teams to Power 5. Now that'll increase their research and everything else as well, right?
Well, what it does, people say, oh, it increases your research. Sort of. What it does is it increases your brand and your standing and your perception, which lets you bring in better students, which brings in more faculty, which brings in better faculty, which lets your faculty win more research grants, which gets you more funding from the government, which gets you even better faculty, which gets you even better students. And that's how you make that. I'm sorry. That's how you make that slide up. It's not like, you're in the Pac-12.
That brings me to my point then, because everything you mentioned there, none of it had to do with football.
No.
That's what brings me to the point.
But here's the thing, is that what that football does is it gives you a brand and a presence. So
right.
I'll give you actually a great example. One of the guy who was the president's number 2 at the University of Pennsylvania, they had just finished a $3.5 billion capital campaign. USC had just finished another $6 billion capital campaign. And we were actually in a meeting on like medical rights funding for staff. And he just like looks at me and gives me this dirty look and he goes, if I had USC football, I could have gotten $20 billion. And we laugh, but you know that one of the big things that football does play a huge role in is creating engagement with your alumni and your donors, right? So like if you're going to give UCLA $100 million for their med school, you're probably like a big UCLA fan and you go to the UCLA games and you have a lot of fun, and that's where you mingle with the other CEOs and the rich people and the donors, and it really is a like self-perpetuating cycle, and sports plays a really important role in that. So, we were joking. I was joking with somebody today about, the SMU Stanford game may have not one person in the upper deck or the end zones, but those skyboxes are going to be packed.
Here's you a good comment, Tony, because you may actually have a chart for this.
So these are a number of NSF grants. I guess we could pull that. I'd have to document it to be kind of a pain. This is just the value of the NSF. This is directly from NSF. Gixxer Squid works in higher ed, so he knows these things. You do also have some wacky things in there, right? Like, so this includes, for example, Cal has a radiation lab on campus. It was always part of the radiation lab. Now it's like separately funded by DOE. This includes APL, Johns Hopkins, like place that actually fires the rockets up in the air. So it's a little bit of, it's a little more complicated in there, but
and Golden Voodoo, there's no argument from any of us.
No one is
you have the
arguing that,
craziest
but we love
videos.
him.
You have the craziest videos. Yeah, we love you, man.
Oh, we love him, but we love him. He's the man.
Now, I wanted to say, Stephen Beanie had a good comment. He said, right, look at Utah. They've improved dramatically. Utah has actually went up $250 million. So almost as much as Colorado has moved up by going from the Big 12 to the Pac-12. Utah has actually done the same. And look at their medical school, how improved that has become by moving into the Pac-12. So that's a very good point. Utah has done tremendous.
They really have, and that's part of what is really attractive to folks. So you say to the people like, all right, does a school want to move somewhere for a few pennies? And I mean, Matt Brown who talks to presidents, Matt Brown talks with athletic directors. I mean, he actually published a column the other day, and he said no Pac-12 schools are leaving, even if it's a little bit more money. And so, again, we are very, very, very confident that no Pac-12 schools will be going to the Big 12. And I'll tell you, Big 12 fans deserve better than the people who are lying to them and telling them otherwise.
Right.
And we're not talking about Golden Blue Dude makes fun videos like, what if everybody like changed their conferences based on like their favorite kind of hoodie? Like, okay, like it's fun. But he's not telling you wrong information. We hope Golden Blue Dude don't do that.
Yeah, I mean everything is just speculation and just what ifs. It's just what ifs. It's for entertainment purposes, and so that's the great thing about Golden Voodoo. So we're sitting here, we're talking with Tony Altimore, who's our resident college football strategist and our numbers guy, and we also have Ty Guy with us tonight. And we're talking about all this conference realignment talk and everything. And we appreciate everybody being here. If you haven't yet, hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button and the bell notification if you would. We'd love to have you here on Mark Rogers, Voice of College Football. Mark has the night off. He had a few things he had to do, and we kind of had to show plan. So he told us to run with it. So that's what we're doing. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Go ahead, buddy. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I was going to say, not at all. I was going to say, should we chat about the prospective additions for the Pac-12 and the Big 12?
Yeah, sure. Let me say one thing first, though, Tony, and this is what the Big 12 needs to understand, because they started out, as just another hatchet job and this and that. The Big 12 don't need to add anybody. The Big 12 is a good conference the way
Big
they
12
are.
Is super strong.
Exactly. The 12 teams you got now, let them settle in. Bring these new 4 teams in, kick Texas and OU out, see for 2 or 3 years where you're at. You're in great shape right now. Adding a team is not going to help you that much.
And actually, hold on. I just want to say this really quick. Chris is talking about the Big Ten Academic Alliance. Chris, I'll be honest. So we've talked about this on Mark's channel. I don't know if you've seen the other times we've talked about it. I also remain very surprised that they didn't take Stanford and Cal. I mean, again, if you're looking at the numbers, it makes financial sense. It makes strategic sense. I don't know why they didn't do it. It may be they just think that Stanford and Cal are not committed to athletics like they need to be. It might be weird personal thing. I don't know the reason for that. And again, when we look at stuff, we talk about we're talking about things that looking at numbers and data we see. It would have made a lot of sense for them to do that. They haven't done it, and it looks like they're not going to, at least in the short to medium term. Again, I was really surprised because we looked at, like, I mean, the Ohio State president at the time was three degree Stanford alum and all that. So D1360, Chris is bringing it up. He's actually a friend of mine. I've tried to get him to come on. Awesome guy. His name's Ryan. Ryan lives in Chicago. Like, totally phenomenal guy. If you're not subscribed to D1360, you should absolutely watch the stuff. Like we've done like long, like late night chats, like pouring over data and stuff like that. And thank you, Joseph, for that. We appreciate that. Thank you to all you guys for your help tonight.
Yeah,
Helps
we had
Mark
super
channel a
sticker
lot.
from Jason. Jason, thank you for the super sticker for $2. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys. All right, so let's dig back into. So we wanted to see, where does San Diego State SMU fit in with the Pac-12? So this actually looks at academic rank, and it also looks at undergrad admissions rate. What's interesting is that they both fit in great into the Pac-12. San Diego State, remember, gets dinged in their rank because they don't have PhD programs. They don't, under the California the Higher Education Master Plan of 1960. So what that means is that they artificially get lowered. So like for San Diego State, like take their rating and take off a third. It's probably about where they should be. So what's interesting about it here, though, is that people talk about, well, should the Big 12 have taken them versus the Pac-12? This is where they fit in with both conferences and how the two conferences fit into each other together. And you see, for example, SMU would have been the highest rated academic school in the Big 12. The Big 12, didn't take them in the past when they've tried repeatedly, and that makes sense. Because remember, the Big 12, the Big 12 is awesome. They're in a position of great strength. The last thing in the world the Big 12 needs is yet another small, private, Christian city school in North Texas, because they already have two. Like, you want to branch out. You want to have new markets. You don't need 3 identical schools that can all hit each other with a golf ball. They can't quite hit each other with a golf ball, but they're Baylor and TCU are already right there. Adding another very similar school to Baylor and TCU is not really what you need. So it makes sense that they're not there yet. You're the issue, if you want to argue SMU to the Big 12, the answer is it should have happened in 1996. But 1996, SMU was still sort of like smoldering from its problems in the late 80s with the NCAA. And so they didn't, and it sucks. For SMU, it sucks because SMU has always deserved better. And if you guys remember, when we talked on 365 and we talked with Mark Rogers a year ago, when the Big 12 was looking to add teams, we talked a lot about SMU. The issue was SMU is fabulous and awesome, but like the Big 12 already has 2 very similar schools in North Texas. I still said I would take them because I think the history of SMU, the alumni of SMU, the culture of SMU are phenomenal. It's a phenomenal catch and a phenomenal fit. But it made sense to me why the Big 12 said we need to expand our market. So that totally logical. Now San Diego State, for example, actually, oh my gosh, Oregon State and San Diego State are mixed up on here, guys. I'm sorry. That was my bad with the logos because they were flipped with the admissions. So San Diego State has the best admissions rate in the Pac. The best admissions rate in the Big 12, and they're 3rd in the Pac. So San Diego State is a great, great school. Sorry, we screwed that up. We were frantically making these charts over dinner, getting ready for tonight. But there's also talk that the Big 12 might want to add more teams. We don't know whether that's true or not. So we're going to take that with a grain of salt. We're going to talk about that a little bit more about their money situation. We don't know whether they will want to or not. There's also talk about the Pac-12 maybe wanting more than 12. So I told you we have projected that the Pac-12 will keep its 10 members, and that we've projected that the Pac-12 will add SMU and San Diego State. We are not able yet to make a projection on whether there will be more. However, we doubt it. Is that a good wording, guys?
Yeah, I think you said the other day, for everybody who's in the military, think about, the government. They all have three things they can do, and rarely does the military or the government go to the extreme. They try to do the least possible change with the better outcome. And so I think going to adding 6 teams total for the Pac-12 would be a bit extreme for them.
Because let's be honest, they really would like to add 0. They really would like to have all of this just go away, and USC and UCLA stop being a pain in the ass, and like the world is just the way it always was.
Yeah.
The way it's looking to me, though, I think eventually we are looking at heading towards 4 conferences of 16 teams eventually. But like we say, we think that right now, I believe the Pac-12 is going to expand, take on a couple more teams right now. And then I think the next conference expansion was not going to come until probably 2031, 2032. They'll start talking again about conference realignment, in my opinion.
And what so this actually lets us think about what we're looking at for right now. And again, we're talking more about the Big 12's wacky money situation in a little bit. I don't think that again, we're not making any projections on the Big 12. But as far as the Pac-12 goes, who would they potentially add? And you hear a lot of people say, oh, Rice. You hear people say, Fresno, Memphis, UNLV. Guys, look here at the academic rank and the research of Fresno State, Memphis, UNLV, and Boise, who people talk a lot about for the Pac. And I just ask you, does that look like a Pac school?
No.
Not at all. Not a bit.
And now, by the way, I believe that there might be strategic reasons to add Fresno. Some of you guys that I've talked to since, for the past year, when USC and UCLA left, the 5 schools that I recommended the Pac offer to were first and foremost San Diego State and SMU. If you guys remember, my third one was I said call Air Force and make them tell you no.
Right.
Because Ty Guy can explain, as a former Marine, can explain the reasons. Ty Guy, is the Pentagon going to let these guys do that?
No, and the problem, the Pentagon wouldn't do it. And even if the Pentagon would, it doesn't make sense for a military school. They got too many restrictions. They can't do NIL. I mean, there's just too much going against a military school. But you have to call them. Air Force has to be called just so you get the no.
They deserve it. Exactly. And if for whatever reason, if they want to do it, go for it. Because, by the way, the Pentagon has turned the Pac-12 down for Air Force multiple times. Air Force was supposed to be a founding member of the Pac-12 before Stanford. When Stanford was still pouting in the 1950s, they were trying to get Air Force. So by the way, in case you guys don't know this, the Pac-12 was founded they started planning in 57, was started in 59. The Pacific Coast Conference preceded the Pac. So whenever you hear somebody talk about the Pac-12 going back to 1915, that's not true. That's like the U.S. trying to claim William the Conqueror, totally unrelated to us.
Right.
Or
like the SEC trying to claim the old Southern Conference.
Exactly. Yeah, the Pac-12 history goes back to 59 as a conference.
With the direction of college football right now, the Pentagon's going to have to change their policy on allowing NIL and for Air Force and Army and all of them at some point. Don't you agree, Ty Guy?
I agree.
I don't know the details of it. I think it's always going to be messy, and I think as football moves more and more towards semi-professionalization, it just gets harder and harder for the service academies. So some of you guys don't know this, but I believe Army and Navy both were signatories of the original Ivy Group agreement. And actually Army and Navy were part of the various tentacles of the Ivy League until 1992. In 1978, Army and Navy officially applied to join the Ivy League and were told no. And it really, really angered them. So then in 1982, when the NCAA was doing the split of what today is at the time was, what was it called? Division, 1A and 1AA, but now it's FBS and FCS. When they were doing the FCS split, they were going to demote the Ivy League. And so the Ivy League went begging for Army, Navy, Northwestern, and Duke to join them because then they wouldn't get demoted. And Army and Navy very correctly gave the Ivy League the middle finger and told them exactly where they could shove that invitation 4 years after they said no. We may get to a point where Army and Navy revisit that and the Ivy League goes to 10. I know the Ivy League folks are going to lose their minds, but it might be something for the future. So anyway, so as we take a look here, who might be a good fit for the Pac-12? The two that always come to mind, if they were going to add 2 more to me, have always been, again, Fresno, there might be some strategic reasons. So Fresno, if you're fearful, you guys have talked in the chat about Cal and Stanford maybe going to the Big Ten in 5 years or 10 years or whatever. I honestly believe if you're worried about that, then you add Fresno and you say, screw the chart, screw the data, screw everything, keep a presence in California. If you're not worried about that, then, Rice and Tulane, I think, are the two that come to mind. And those are pretty geographically adjacent to SMU and not causing you problems. But I'll tell you the two schools here, and we think about maybe more for the Big 12 than the Pac-12. You guys look at UConn and USF.
Yeah.
Look at UConn right up there with Washington.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at USF. I mean, USF's a way better school than Central Florida. Central Florida is a great school. USF and UConn are just two phenomenal teams in big markets.
And think about this, Tony.
Yep.
If the Big 12 grabs USF, there you go. Now you got a travel partner for
Central Florida.
UCF. And then if you grab UConn, guess what? It's closer to West Virginia than the other teams you've added. So it kind of gives,
and
over there.
And we talk about TV markets, guys. UConn right there, right outside. What's that little town that's near UConn? The TV market town. Oh, New York.
Oh, yeah, New York.
Now let me say something about what Ty Guy's saying here. He's not saying that's what's going to happen, because we have to remember that the Big 12 adds any group of 5
talking
teams.
Down the way. We're talking 5 years, 10 years. Who knows?
The Big 12 adds any group of 5 team right now because the grant of rights have been signed. They get no money for adding a group of 5. Nothing.
And Joey, should we take a look real quick at the Big 12's money situation?
Yeah, let's do it.
As we know it. Now, again, this is so we're going to talk about, guys, when we talk about the Big 12's money, we're talking about as we know that has been reported by Fox and ESPN. So again, there's a lot of nonsense you read on the internet. We don't know, what of any of it is true. We are only going to talk tonight about what we know from Fox and ESPN. And Fox and ESPN are the two partners of the Big 12. Now, so there's another piece of this that's very interesting that we've learned in the last couple days by rumors. We don't know if it's true. And that is that the Pac-12 might have hoped that they were going to get $40 million. That is kind of ridiculous, right? Like, I guess that goes in the you hope you're gonna, Cindy Crawford's gonna call you, but she's not gonna call you. So we had been told by Bob Thompson, the people that John Wilner talked to, the people that John Canzano talked to, ad nauseum, that the Pac-12 was expected to see between 30 and 35 of an estimated media rights value projection. We know that they've received various offers. We've been told between 25 and 30 already. We know that if they do keep, which they're not going to keep, but if they did want to keep the Pac-12 content somewhat standalone, there's money in that. And the Pac-12 has $0 exit fee at the end of its grant of rights. So this is all very well known, very covered. Anything, that's not in there is rumor, probably nonsense. Now, one of the other pieces is based on what we know from people we've talked to at West Virginia and the published data that we've seen from UCLA, which is going to be higher because the Big Ten is a little further travel. But we estimate that any Pac-12 team that was going to play in the Big 12 would need to spend about $5 million a year more in travel. So now if we look here at the Big 12 does not have money to give. They just don't. The Big 12 has they made a great media rights deal that gave them solidity. It gave them strength. But it's a $31 million a year media rights value. If they add a G5 team, though, they get no additional money. And the reason for that is that Fox pays like 11 million of that or something, and ESPN pays about 20. The Fox deal, because Fox is only buying a certain number of games. Remember, guys, the networks aren't paying like per team, like in a mindset like we have. They're paying for the content they're buying. So Fox is buying like 2 games, and they get to pick, I don't know, the second pick and the 4th pick, however that works. I don't know exactly which ones that they have. But when they, for example, on the Big Ten, they get to pick big noon kickoff first. They have, their various ways that they do their picking. So Fox, I think it's is it an average, Joey, you would know, is it an average of 2 games? Something like that.
I don't know. I have not seen the new contract, but I can tell you in the past, yeah, it's about what it is.
It's about 2 games or so. So whatever it is, they're not taking more than that. So if the Big 12 adds more teams, it's just more games that are happening that they get to pick from. ESPN, however, takes the rest of the content, and the bottom end of that content ends up in ESPN Plus. So that's why essentially what ESPN is saying is like, okay, if you added a Power 5 team, we'd give money for that. But if you had a G5 team, it's just more content we have to dump on ESPN Plus, and we're not really interested in that. And so that is why ESPN has offered them again, this is built into their contracts, offer them $0 for a Power 5 team. They're offering up $20 million. Now, here's the thing. We know that's not enough money to entice someone to join them. We know that. And so
just think if you were Arizona State and the Big 12 was trying to get you in there and say, hey, we're going to give you $20 million a year, but you're going to have extra $5 million in travel costs, so you're going to make about $15 million over here. You're just not going to take that. So
it just doesn't make sense. And even if there was some weird thing, people are like, oh, well, we can all band together and take a little less, and we get them to come with it. Like,
Iowa State's not taking less.
How many teams in the Big 12 are going to say, yeah, hold up our hand for that, right? Well, and then there's people that say this, and then Tony, I'm going to let you explain where this went. There's people that say this. Well, all of a sudden, though, but Texas and Oklahoma are paying $100 million, and they're leaving. They got that $100 million they can pay for them.
First of all, that's not sustainable. Second of all, remember that is actually money. The new members are already fronting the money that is going to the old members are fronting the money that's going to the new members. So like the share with the partial share for the first 2 years that Houston and BYU and Central Florida and whoever else I'm forgetting, whoever it is, I'm sorry, I love you, Cincinnati. Everybody else is helping pay that. So that's coming out of somebody else's share, and then this Texas Oklahoma money is paying them back. Plus, a bunch of that Texas Oklahoma money is just being given to Fox to buy out Fox's share of not having Texas and Oklahoma.
So remember,
that money is spent.
Tony, I wanted to touch base because there are people reporting on different places that Fox has said they're only taking 20 of the 100 million, so that's 80 million. So the conference decided to take that 80 million and entice the Four Corners school. But if you think about that, that's only 20 million per school. The contract's for 6 years, so that's only $3 extra million a year. So now you went from 15 million to 18 million, and it
doesn't even pay for your travel.
Yeah. Exactly. But they're not figuring in like what Tony said. They're not figuring in travel. And they're not figuring in paying back the other teams already, out of that too.
And this is a funny thing, Ty Guy, SEC exit fees are $0, aren't they?
You just pay for your boxes and we say goodbye to you. If you're dumb enough to leave the SEC, look at Tulane, look at Sewanee. What's Georgia Tech think now about where they're at? If you want to leave, go ahead and leave. We don't care.
Yeah. So this is, and remember, guys, here when we're here debating like 3 million, 5 million. What were the numbers we were talking about before? They were in the hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
So again, we're trying to help folks understand, like, okay, yeah, there's a little bit of stuff here on this, but like, this is small money. Now, remember also, and this is a big piece, is that every school gets additional money that is money that comes from the bowls. It's money that comes from the college football playoff. It's money that comes from the NCAA and the money that they get from March Madness. So there is extra money. So this is actually, we're just going to compare here. So we like to call it the Power 2 and the 3 triplets. So that all that extra money right now, it's about 10 million. It's a school. They think that with the new college football playoff negotiations, which have not happened yet, so we do not know what that is. They think it's going to be about 20. But the thing is it really doesn't matter because it's the same or pretty close to the same for all of the conferences. So this sort of takes a look here. The Big Ten, you see the colored bars are the media rights. Currently, the Big 12 is pretty much in fourth because remember the ACC rights are a long time, and it's a lower value. I forget exactly what 28 million or something over like the 20 some years. But the thing is it's less money 10 years ago, and it's more money 10 years from now. So when we tried to estimate and we talked to some ACC people that really know this stuff well, we tried to estimate what is the actual ACC media rights portion of the payout going to be during the period that the Big Ten and the SEC and the Pac-12 and then the Big 12 have these deals. It's about 33, 34. It's a little more than they think. It's a little more than the Big 12, but it's a little bit pretty close.
But honestly, if you look at it, it's all about the same. Because if you're looking from 50 million, like we're estimating with the Pac-12 to 53 million for the ACC and 52 for the,
it's the same.
It's the same.
Yeah. Because remember, we're talking about people, guys. We're talking about presidents and CEOs who round to the billion. So we're not like trying to like measure our little tiny micro donks here over like $1 million, because people are measuring like, their elephant dongs in the billions as you're a president. So but again, you sort of see here, you're looking at about a 50 million, and the Big Ten here number, I'm told, is maybe a little low. To make it adjustment right, we try to be conservative here, but you're really looking at about a difference of 40 or 50 million from any of the three triplets to go to the Big Ten. And that's where, really the money is very different there. But the money between the Pac-12 and the Big 12 and the ACC is not different.
No,
not meaningfully. But again, remember, the thing is the networks have said, we're not going to the Big 12. Like, we're not going to give you money to give to everybody else. So if the Big 12 wants to add teams, that number will get smaller per team.
Right. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that say, oh, no, that's not true. ESPN and Fox will reopen negotiations. No, they won't. That's a fight.
How's that working for the ACC? Are they just giving more money to Clemson because Iowa State has really good barbecue, so they should give more money to Clemson, right?
Yeah, because honestly, I mean, look at the ACC. And Tony will tell you that when ESPN signed with the ACC, it was kind of a risk. But today, it's a huge reward because they're making a lot of money off the ACC, and you don't see ESPN saying, well, we feel guilty that we're making so much off of you that we're going to give you the money back.
So here's Huffer Billy Paul, we love you. We're going to pick on you. This is a really ignorant comment, actually. We're picking on you because we love you. Schools very much fund the athletics.
Yeah.
The majority only a very few schools net positive in athletics. Most schools they're using student funds, they're using student fees, and a lot of them, like Cal now, is just dumping $30 million in the athletic department. It's very, 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 very few athletic departments that operate totally in the black. Because remember, you're looking at the payouts here. These are the conference payouts. The schools have, a lot of these schools have $150, $200 million athletic department budgets. So yeah, actually, no, the schools are very much paying for that.
Well, and one thing
most of them,
Tony, just last year, Alabama had $131 million in revenue just from football. Total athletics was $198 million. Well, guess what? If we spend a little money, what happens? It's the school is on the hook for that. And like Tony said, not every school makes money. A lot of schools lose money.
Most of them do. And again, the big money ones, Michigan, Ohio State, USC, Clemson, Alabama. Yeah, they come out in the black, but most schools lose money. And if you're somebody who's like so stupidly narrow-minded, you're like, well, Mark Score doesn't. Well, then, go watch something else. But the big thing here, guys, is really look here at why they're the same. And that's what people need to understand. They're not more. And the Big 12 is probably going to be the least, because the Big 12 did a brilliant thing. The Big 12's media negotiations were brilliantly done. They just did a quick extension of their current contract to stabilize, because they are a conference that has had so much instability that they wanted to stabilize. And it was brilliantly done. They got a great price for it, I think, given how fast they did it. Could they have gotten more? Yeah, they could have gotten more. But, again, we're talking about people who are dealing with stuff in hundreds of millions of dollar numbers. So, yeah, okay, they maybe they're getting $3-5 million less than they could have. I don't think it's a big deal, because it's the stability that they got made it worth it. So, I give full kudos and credit to the Big 12 for their deal.
Well, think about this, Tony. They made the deal, and why it was so good is, and this, at the time, who applied to the Pac-12 from the Big 12? They were at risk of losing other schools, and they, so they had to do something quick. And you know what? They did a great job. And that's what people don't understand. They did this because they thought they could lose more than just Texas and Oklahoma.
And I give full kudos to them on that, because they really did a great job, and they deserve the stability. But also, by the way, as we talk here about like, should they add more teams? They have to integrate 4 teams. Yep. And I was actually doing some analysis on this, and this is a little bit more in depth, and I need to do some more digging on this. So I don't want to say it 100%, but I believe, guys, tell me if I'm wrong, I don't think any conference that has added, a lot of teams all at once has ever really succeeded. They've all struggled with that and problems. Like you look at the Big East, you look at the Mountain West, you look at the WAC.
Well, here's a good one. Look at the Big 12.
Yeah.
They added the Southwest Conference, and what happened? Nebraska and Colorado bailed. Texas A&M and Missouri.
They've lost six of the original 12.
So I mean, it's hard to integrate 4 or more teams into a conference and make it work. That's why you see the Big Ten wanting USC and UCLA, and then let's calm down and see how that works. The same with the SEC with just Texas and Oklahoma. Let's see how that works. Because if you add 8 new teams, that's a huge change.
It's now in the Big 12 defense this time, we didn't have a choice but to add 4 teams because of the revenue we lost. We lost so much revenue with Texas and Oklahoma.
And but my point is, I think that's like about as much as you can bite off.
Yeah,
in a short time. I would be really worried about biting off more.
Yeah,
I would too. And I know a lot of people are talking about as well. Brent, your remark about we're going to head west and things and things. I really believe it. Maybe we might take on Gonzaga, in basketball. I don't see anything else being added.
But check out Gonzaga right here, right? Like Gonzaga is right there, nestled in with BYU, Baylor, and TC. Gonzaga is a great school. It's not a research school. They do $500,000 a year in research. Again, they're doing $500,000. Cal's doing arguably $3 billion. But Gonzaga is a great school. They don't have a football team. The advantage of it is we just talked about they don't have money to add. The great thing about basketball is that it's cheap. So you could add Gonzaga and pay them like $5 or $6 million out of your bowl money, and you're not even worried about it. Like you can actually afford that, and it's fine. I don't know if the Big 12 will or will not add Gonzaga, but I think that it would be a good thing for them. I also think that if they did, it adds a travel partner for BYU. So, for example, if you're the West Virginia soccer team, actually no, the soccer team's in the they actually play in the Sun Belt. If you're the West Virginia volleyball team, and you're going out to BYU, that's a long ass trip to play one game and come home. You might as well play a game at BYU, play another game at Gonzaga, and then come home. And that's how travel partners work. Remember, travel partners are not for the teams traveling, or not for the teams when they are traveling. It's for the teams that are coming to you to be able to do 2 games in that trip. And so to get to BYU is a mess. The other thing is BYU refuses to play games on Sundays. So that makes your scheduling really hard. So adding a travel partner might make that work a lot better. And I think Gonzaga will be really good for that. Again, we're not projecting that. We're not predicting it. We don't know what they're going to do, but it would certainly be a smart, I think, and good ad for them. And I'll tell you the other thing about Gonzaga. Gonzaga is a Jesuit school. And you guys are going to hate me for saying this, but like having Jesuit priests in any room makes your decision-making better. So like, I joke with some friends. We use the "these people need Jesus" meme, particularly when we talk about BYU. But the Jesuit priest from Gonzaga would be an advantage for the Big 12. I think it's a great school.
Yeah, I agree. Now another thing too, a lot of people talk about the weakness of conferences.
Actually, hold on really quick. Badger, I think Big Ten. Stanford wanted in so bad, and the Big Ten said no.
Yeah.
So you're actually wrong in that. This is actually kind of crazy. In fact, there were rumors that that Stanford was like, we don't even care about the money, just let us in the club.
Yeah.
I don't know, guys. Again, I don't know. Someday somebody will write a book. Maybe Mitch Albom or somebody will write a book that tells the story of like what went on and why Stanford and Cal didn't get the nod. Because again, when we look at the math, this is why we say when we look at the math and we look at the numbers like this and we try to figure out what's happening, you know, we're not trying to like tell you we tap their phones. We don't know. Somebody says here, if the Big 12 can have San Jose and Boise State, maybe they kickstart. You know, who knows? That's what, John. That's a really good question. Actually, we don't have San Jose on this chart because they nobody's really talking about them, but they're very similar in metrics a lot to Fresno. I think they're maybe ranked a little higher. We'd have to double check, but you know, again, it's very much not in the sort of where the Pac was going. In fact, the Pac was actually asked to San Jose State applied to join the Pac predecessor, the PCC, when USC and UCLA quit last time in 1957. And the conference had a choice of adding them or dissolving, and they dissolved. So who knows?
So I see a lot of people talking about weaker conferences, right? And a lot of people are saying, well, the ACC is the weakest conference. They're borderline being dissolved, and the Pac-12 is borderline being dissolved. The Big 12 is borderline being dissolved. I think every Power Five conference is pretty solid, but if you had to choose one of those three that is the weaker and most unstable, not necessarily anything else, just unstable, which one would you say?
Short term or long term?
I'm looking at let's take a look at long term here.
So here's
look at both of them. Let's look at short term and long term.
Okay, so first of all, let's talk about one thing the Big 12 did. Texas did that screwed everyone in the Big 12, but maybe helped it too. When you join the Big 12, you have to sign. I don't know if it's still 99 years or now it's like 90, 92. I don't know exactly the timing on it, but they set in place. They all had to sign a 99-year commitment that came with a fee of 2 years of distributions to get out. So as we talked about, when they're at in a couple of years, when they're at a $30 million distribution, $31 million distribution, and about a $20 million of playoff and all that kind of money, you're talking about $100 million fee to get out of the Big 12. So this is why, like a lot of people think Houston, like the Pac should poach Houston. Houston's not going to write $100 million check to go to the Pac-12. Right. So I think that this like ridiculous like $100 million blood oath that the Big 12 has gotten people to sign makes them arguably the most stable, because the only thing that would let somebody leave is, for example, if like the Big Ten offered Kansas. Kansas is an AAU school. It's a flagship school. Kansas badly wants to go to the Big Ten. If the Big Ten offered Kansas, they would take it. But I don't see anybody that would write $100 million check to go anywhere other than the Big Ten or the SEC. You guys?
No.
Team.
Houston has money. I mean, there's oil money down there.
Yeah.
But Houston is not writing $100 million check.
No, there's very few teams. There's very few teams in the Big 12 that could afford to write that $100 million check.
Right.
And the other thing is, if you're thinking about like, oh, should they go to the Pac or the AC? You're talking about, okay, let's write $100 million check to make pretty much the same amount of money.
Exactly.
No, you're not going to do
that.
You might, if like you could really make a case like, okay, this will get us in the AAU or something like that. Nobody's that who's really that close. It's not going to make a difference for anybody. The Big 12.
Tony, here's the question, Tony.
Yeah.
Now they sign their life away, but by doing that, it also makes it hard for the Big 12 to pick up a decent school, because guess what? Oregon is not going to sign their life away to come and play in the Big 12, because they have you thinking they're going to the Big 10. So, a lot of people say, well, we'll let them in for 5 years. And then, if they get, but no, that's not what the Big 12 is doing. And so it is kind of harder for the Big 12 to get a great school who wants to sign, a 99 year contract that says we're going to pay $100 million to get out of.
Yeah. I think that we think about like, over the long term, I just think it makes the Big 12 strong in that nobody's going to leave.
Right.
The other thing,
the ACC schools are looking at that same thing right now, $100 million to get out.
The ACC school now, the ACC grant of rights, their contract goes through what 2036, I think.
2036, right?
Yeah, and it's supposedly an unbreakable nightmare. You guys saw it. Like if Texas can't get out, nobody can get out. So the ACC schools are pretty well locked together until you get a couple of years from that, then it would be negotiable. But you're certainly looking at for the short term, the ACC is just as actually more secure than the Big 12. However, over the long term, the ACC, a lot of people think the ACC may have some weaknesses, which is why the ACC is right now, again, today talking about this, that they may move to an unequal revenue sharing model. And that, may be something that with you guys, again, when we think about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it'll be a different world. And maybe Clemson and Florida State don't want to leave. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, because think about this, Tony. 2 years ago, would you imagine Texas and Oklahoma coming to the SEC and then USC and UCLA going? Nobody really saw that coming. There's
and
people
actually,
who would like to see it coming, but not seen it coming.
Red Wine, who's awesome, just reminds us Texas wrote those exit rules. So it's very, very fitting that Texas is the one who has to write the check to get out of them.
Exactly.
Yes, Red Wine, you are so right on that. Absolutely.
And the other thing, when they write that check and they come to the SEC next year, guess what? Them and OU are not getting a full share next year. They're coming in at half a share.
Are they?
They are. Because our new contract doesn't
start for the next year. That's right.
So a lot of people don't know that, but yeah, Texas and Oklahoma, they're writing a big check and they're not gaining the money because we're not paying them a full share.
And by the way, here's another funny thing. Gumby's pointing out, Gumby makes a joke here that Nike sales are more than you. Actually, Oregon spends more on athletics than they do on research. That's one of just the little funny things. Just a little.
Yeah, I was looking at that earlier. That they were down in the 100 million area. Where was that at? I was looking. Oh, right there.
Right, it's right here on this chart. Yeah. Actually, you can see it. They're at 139.
Yeah, 139. So,
yeah, I don't know how they're in the AAU. I think they're in the AAU because historically they were Stanford's best friend. They were like Stanford's sidekick. And so I think maybe Stanford pulled some favors. Who knows? And Oregon's a great. By the way, guys, everyone on this list is a great institution and it's a great school. There are no crappy schools in any of the power conferences, and there's no crappy schools that they're looking at adding. They're not there. You don't hear that. So who knows? Again, but I just want to be clear that, again, when we're talking about scales of awesomeness here, let's think of it that way. Again, we're scales of awesomeness.
Tony, and you mentioned something earlier, about surprised Stanford didn't go to the Big Ten.
I am.
And, you said maybe because of sport, but the thing is, Stanford is awesome in sports. It's football. It's just football that they've kind of given up a little bit. They've had great periods of time, Stanford has throughout history. But, yeah, because Stanford has won at least one national championship since 1976. So think about that. Every year they've won at least one national championship.
Well, didn't they win the Directors' Cup 28 years in a row?
Oh, yeah. They've been almost impossible to beat in the Directors' Cup.
Except Texas. Texas finally beat them, hook them.
And Florida's done well a few times, but yeah, it's all Stanford. Stanford,
Now, Tony, I'd like to touch on something else here real quick.
Yeah.
You had an interesting thought on why, and I don't know if you want to share it here. I'm just going to ask you like this. You had an interesting thought on why Arizona State may be having a little bit of racket there about coming to the Big 12, maybe trying to shake some people up in the Pac-12.
Can we put on our tinfoil hats?
Yeah.
Okay, let's all put on our tinfoil hats. Everybody put on your tinfoil hat. Let me see. Your virtual tinfoil hat there. Okay, we're putting on our tinfoil hats here for just a minute because this is not anything else. This is just an idea. This is me saying, what would I do if I was ASU? This is not saying ASU is doing this. I'm just saying, what would I do if I was Arizona State? And I really wanted to get into the AAU. I would make a big stink to the other Pac presidents, and I would be like, hey, I might go to the Big 12. you should let me in the AAU. And when they go, you are absolutely not going to the Big 12, I'd be like, what you gonna do? You want to test me? And then I would make them find a way to get me in.
Yep.
That's what I would do if I was Michael Crow. I would. Dr. Crow, by the way, legendary, awesome president of Arizona State, has led Arizona State to academic heights that the state of Arizona never dreamed that they would be able to achieve. Phenomenal university administrator. Whatever you think of their football team in the last few years, again, very much a legendary figure. And if I were him, I would absolutely try to do that. I don't know if it'd work or not, but I would try.
Jason, thank you for
we take our tinfoil hat.
And
that was a tinfoil hat moment. We're taking it off.
Yeah. Jason, thank you for the $2 super chat. And I think it goes back to what Ty Guy and Tony were talking about, how conferences should not add a bunch of teams at one time, and the Big Ten kind of added 2 and stopped. So I think that's why Stanford may have been turned down.
Who knows? But I mean, they all wanted to come again, and I don't think USC and UCLA would mind if they had brought Stanford and Cat. Who knows? But one thing we do know is that it's been reported anyway a lot from the math that that Washington, and look, I mean, guys, and by the way, we're talking about Stanford and Cal. We're shortchanging the dogs here. The University of Washington also absolutely spectacular, world-class school. In fact, if you use the global rankings that they use for international students, Washington is something like a top 10 school in the world under some of the global rankings. So Washington, total rock star there. We were told that the Big Ten, the Fox and ESPN, the Fox and NBC and CBS people together figured out that further schools out west would be dilutive, and they weren't taking it. So again, who I don't know. Again, somebody will write the book on that and we'll learn. But certainly for now it is what it is, and we think that it is going to stay that way again for the short and medium term. Long term, who knows?
Yep.
What do you chat? What do you guys think? I mean,
fill out some questions, guys. You guys want me to post the StreamYard link and let's open it up and let some people come in and ask questions?
Yeah, sure. If you guys want to call in and ask questions, we can chat on stuff. We have a lot of different charts here, guys, that we can flip to too. If you guys want to look and compare schools and stuff like that. If you want to think about who would be good for the Big 12 and Pac-12, we've got some charts that would compare those. We'd love to see what you guys think here. Chris, so all right, so we're gonna talk here who be fit from the again, this is looking long term. We're not talking short term, medium term. Because we know that nobody's leaving the ACC anytime soon. Nobody's leaving the ACC anytime soon. I think Miami and Florida State would be immediately phenomenal for the Big Ten. Georgia Tech would be phenomenal. North Carolina, Virginia, maybe even Virginia Tech. They'd probably be the later on that list. That would be my list. If I was the Big Ten, I would want to take a stab at those guys. But remember, too, guys, the thing is you don't want this stuff to be that big. Right? You're not trying to create the United Nations. You're trying to have a conference here. And so the thing is, you get so big and then you're too big and then you split apart.
Well, and think about this, Tony. Everybody complains at the SEC. Well, Texas A&M has been in the SEC for 10 years now, and they've only played Georgia once. Now, the SEC is going to a 3-6-6 model to change that. But if you get back up into 24 teams, how often are you going to get to play all those teams? So, I mean, it kind of dilutes it where you think, Miami's going to go to the Big Ten, so that would be some great matchups. But if you go to 24 teams, you won't see those matchups as often.
No, exactly. It starts to be the purpose. Somebody's asking here, I just want to be really clear because there's a weird perception in Big 12 Twitter right now that this is like a new precedent of buying out your thing. Everybody does this. Everybody does this. And you always do it at a half off disc. It's sort of like when you do get out of these contracts, guys, it's a little bit like shopping at Marshall's. You get half off, whatever it says on the tag. So they got it. They got some money off. It's fine. Remember, I mean, UConn paid to get out of the AAC to join the Big East. So everybody does that. There's no new precedent. Really, there's no new precedent. Now, Texas wrote itself the dumbest, biggest bill because they wrote the rules that set the value, and then they had to pay half. So,
right.
All right, we have a visitor. We got Larry Pilgrim joining us. Larry, welcome to the show.
Hey,
Hi,
Tony. Hey, Joey. Hey, Tide guy.
Hi,
How we doing?
Good. So, all this alignment talk. Oh,
makes your head
Um,
spin.
But Larry, since we talked to you last, I mean, the big thing is, I think people are yapping. I think your school's former rival is doing a lot of yapping, but we don't see moves in that regard.
no. And that's the issue I've had is, so when we talk about realignment, and I know it makes for great fodder and great videos, but there's a point when it starts becoming like a joke, and then you start arguing with people. And I've used, your numbers, and we already know the contracts for the Big 12. They really can't. How are they going to add anybody? It's a negative, no matter which way you look at it. And I don't know any business that likes to run in a negative.
Yeah,
And,
I mean, I guess there is the caveat, right, that we are basing this off what we have been told by ESPN and Fox.
right. Well,
So
it's all about inventory. We already know Fox they're good. They've taken their budget, they've sunk it all into the Big Ten network and the Big Ten. They don't need nor want any more inventory. They don't care about Oregon playing Utah or Washington. They don't need the inventory. Their shelves are stocked. ACC is not getting out of their GOR. It's a lease. You sign a lease. They're in a lease. So, it's just, I think it's kind of harmful. It's almost getting to a point of being harmful. And I was trying to talk to Chris of GBD that, like, it's starting to become harmful with all these rumors and all the negativity, if that makes sense.
But think of it like this, though, Larry. This is all really fun until you get someone like Tony who ruins it with logic. Yeah, logic is what ruins all those great times those people are having with their ideas,
It is.
Right.
Well, and that's why
Yeah.
I want to point out, again, let's just reiterate to anybody who's new and joining us again, we're trying to talk here. Remember, there's different categories you're talking, right? There's like what is going to happen, what you project and believe will happen, what you think might happen, what you think could happen, and what you just loved having. And it's okay to say, like, I wish we would do this.
Right.
I wish they wanted, it's okay to be like, I wish that, Giselle wanted to marry me. So long as you're not like, Giselle and I are planning our wedding.
Right.
Well, let's
Right.
look at it. I like to look at it like this, and I've used this narrative before. Let's think about it like this. We've got 5 power conferences, and there's 5 departments in a grocery store. You've got produce department, dairy department, deli department, meat department, and grocery department, right? If you work in the grocery department, let's just say that you're the head grocery clerk in the grocery department.
Oh.
If the manager comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm gonna move you over to the deli department, and you're going to slice ham for the rest of the time," how about that? If you want to go. How many grocery department people are going to say, "I want to slice ham the rest of my life. Move me to deli right now"? They're just not going to do it because it would be a move down. It's not. It might be a lateral move to where you're going to make the same amount of money, but it would just be a move down in a way. So you got to look at conferences like that in the same sense. When you're talking about the research money that the Pac-12 gets and how much more Pac-12 schools get in research, it pales in comparison.
Thank you, Todd, for clarifying
Big
that.
12. Yeah, it pales in comparison to Big 12, and so that's where I like to look and just say, what would I do if I was in the grocery department at Kroger's and they told me they wanted me to move over to stock the dairy department? Would I look at it as a lateral move? Probably, but would I want to do it? Not really. I don't want to work over in the coolers all day, but I'm working in the department store.
Here's a big point so we all know Tar Heel. He's insufferable. So I got into discussions with him. Okay, my stepfather is the world's leading seismic engineer, basically in the world. He's a retired professor from the University of Illinois. And so I've talked to him at lengths about this. I have been a general contractor and been a superintendent for big projects. And when I talk to him, you know, about sharing research money, it's like, no, you don't share research money, but you do. Like, so when he was doing some seismology, he didn't have some equipment. He gets to pick who he wants to put on the grant with him. And I tried explaining this to Tar Heel, that being in a conference with somebody that shares some of the same technology or is in line with you, you can actually request in a grant, you can put that university in there with you.
And the Big Ten does that, especially.
Yeah, and he tried arguing this with me. He tried arguing this with me, and I'm like, I call up my stepdad and I said, hey, we've talked about this. And he says, yeah. He goes, I had to go do some stuff in Mexico City. He says, we didn't have the equipment. He called up Caltech, who he had one of his doctorates through, and hired them and put them on the grant and brought them down there with their equipment.
Hold on. Larry Pilgrim, I've got a question for you.
Right. Okay.
Are you telling me that your esteemed researcher with a PhD from Caltech is more reliable than an anonymous person in the YouTube comments?
I think so. Tony. I told you, he wrote the seismic code in 1990s, headed up FEMA,
and
he wrote the seismic code. This guy is
more reliable than an anonymous commenter on YouTube.
Yeah, and it was and so I just couldn't argue with the guy. I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I get professor?
I don't know. I don't even read his comments because
now Larry
argues.
Larry, let me ask you a question, because I got into an argument with the guy.
Oh, hold on. No, Larry Gumby believes that YouTube commenters are more reliable than Caltech PhDs. I guess
let me say something real quick. To the chat. This is not an attack on Golden Blue Dude Day, please. This has nothing to really do with Golden Blue Dude. These reports about conference realignment and Arizona State coming to the Big 12, those are put out by CBS Sports and even some Pac-12 news publications. So that's what we're talking about. This is not an attack on Golden Blue Dude. So please, there's no need in attacking him.
But again, we are projecting from from the shows that we do here on the Voice College Football channel. We have projected, like election style, projected that no teams will be leaving the Pac-12.
Yeah.
And part of that has to do with we won't get into all the details and ways we've tried to verify that. We do have that pretty solidly from Arizona. We do have that from the behavior of the CEOs. We have that from the behavior of the conference. We have that from that stuff that, again, we are projecting that there will be no defections. And we believe that anybody who is talking about defections is either having fun or saying, I wish, or they're giving you false information.
Or angry.
At this point.
Right. Or a little.
Or they're just angry. Or they're angry.
We know the Arizona writer came out after USC and UCLA, announced their departure, and he came on and started making reports that Arizona was basically going to leave for the Big 12 then, and their AD had to come out and do a freaking a television interview. We're not leaving.
Yeah, the Arizona AD, the Utah AD. They've both been very, very clear. The Arizona State president acts like the Big 12 is leprosy. Right. I don't think he's going I don't think he's interested. But again, he might be trying to negotiate stuff. So, guys, take this all with a grain of salt, because the other thing is a lot of this stuff, people are saying, oh, this is from a donor. Donors have, unless you're like $1 billion donor or $100 million, like those people have no knowledge or influence of any of this stuff.
I'll give you one, Tony. I'll give you one, and you will concur on this donor having some say. John Huntsman.
Yeah, if Huntsman wanted to, that exactly.
Yes, he does. In fact, did you know BYU and University of Utah football, the coaches, there's a lot of people in certain departments that just don't want to play them anymore because it's just gotten like disgusting sick, throwing crap at refs, and they don't want to play. It's the donors that are making it. They want to see it. And so,
and that's a whole nother. We're not even talking about that institution, but
let me ask you a question, Larry, because I get into an argument with a good guy. I mean, the guy's great. His name's Shooter. but I was arguing Colorado. You know, they're making $300 million more now. But you made the comment with Utah. You know, they share research and help. Now, if you were to back away from the Pac-12, then a lot of that shared research would go away also, because you're no longer in the conference. You're no longer correct. I mean, that's kind of how it works.
And
yeah, Utah's a medical research. They're not going to back away from having Stanford, a Cal, and a Washington that share a lot of the same research type situations to go. I mean, there may be some medical schools in the Big 12, but they're not Cal, they're not Stanford, and they're not Washington.
Kansas.
And let's also, guys, let's also talk about one other thing, which is, if you were mad at somebody for messing this up, would you be vengeful? Mm-hmm. And guess what vengeful means? Vengeful means that your students don't get into grad school. Vengeful means that your PhDs don't get hired by that school. Like, it depends on whether a university wants to be vengeful about this or not. And I'll tell you what, I think they would get vengeful.
Yep.
If somebody were to really mess this up. And I don't think anybody's gonna mess it up. There's another piece too about the Arizona schools. Can we have a quiet little, like, a little like circle of trust here, of honesty about the Arizona schools? Let's look here. How are the Arizona schools academically? Oh, they're the bottom that isn't the two ag schools, right? Yeah. They are the bottom that isn't the two ag schools. When the two Arizona schools came in, the headline in the LA Times was USC power play expands Pac-8. Stanford and Washington wanted nothing to do with those two. USC and UCLA threatened to leave the conference. The president of USC said, "I'm going out in 15 minutes to talk to the press. I'm either telling them we've admitted Arizona and Arizona State, or that USC and UCLA have left." So honestly, if Arizona State was saying, "Oh, we're going to go to the Big 12," I honestly think Stanford and Washington would be like, "Dude, you need some boxes?" I mean, for real, they'd be like, "No, you're not. Sit down, shut up, know your place." They're not going. None of these teams are going anywhere. And again, remember, you have to look here. They benefit from the Pac way more than the Pac benefits from. What has Arizona won? 4 football games in like 5 years? Oh my God, what would happen if we lost them? I say this because I love Arizona, and I know for a fact from people that we've spoken with, Arizona is not going anywhere. So we're picking on Arizona. We're picking on them out of love.
Are you saying they miss
none of these people are going anywhere?
Are you saying they miss Rich Rodriguez?
I am not bringing up Rich Rodriguez to you.
Well, I did hear.
We're going to have to wrap this show up, because I have another show here in 15 minutes over on Golden Blue Dude. So we're going to have to wrap this show up here real soon.
I have a question, Tony.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are people who are saying to me, and I'm like, no, they don't. San Diego State, all of this, they have leverage, and if they're threatening the Pac, that they'll go to the Big 12. And when I bring up, what's the big pay coming from if they go to the Big 12? Who's paying them?
Actually,
I have said
that is completely irrelevant.
SDSU has no leverage to say, if you don't sign us, Pac, or give us a full share. They were trying to say that San Diego has this leverage on the Pac, and I'm just like, they have,
okay,
they have no leverage.
That is written by somebody who is an ignorant idiot, and let me tell you why. The importance of San Diego State joining the Pac-12 will bring together 100 years of conflict, problem, drama, classism, arguments, and second-class citizenship feeling, all these arguments about the University of California system versus the Cal State system. And these fights go back to when the UC Regents stole and seized 2 campuses of the normal schools in 1919, which they turned into UCLA and UC Santa Barbara. And this is going to bring together Cal State and UC are going to sit at the table together in the Pac-12. And that is monstrous. And anybody who doesn't appreciate how monstrous that is, and is like, Well, but maybe they want to play in Waco and Ames and Orlando, which one, they don't.
No.
And two, anybody who thinks that the word Waco or Ames or Orlando has any being in a debate about whether Cal State and UC are going to sit at the same table together is a freaking moron.
Yeah, and unfortunately
You can quote me on
San Diego State, I'm willing to bet that half of their fans could not point out Ames, Iowa on a map.
It's east of the 5, and let's be honest. I'm going to throw my own alma mater here under the bus. When USC was going to play at Auburn, some of my friends, they thought it was a farm school, and it was probably up near Stockton. And they were like, "That's too far. I'm not going to go."
You know what's amazing is I don't know. I never knew hardly anything about the Pac-12. Thank goodness for Tony and Tim Prangley and the other guys that have come into this show and taught us a lot about the Pac-12 and everything about the history of it. Because I mean, there's a lot of history of the Pac-12 I just didn't know until Tony.
Well, and honestly, Joey, before Tony, Rick, and Tim did the Pac-12 show, honestly, the Pac-12 didn't get no love. There's not Pac-12 shows. There's not a lot of shows, and Tony don't just pat the Pac-12 on the back. You know, they give you the history, they give you the insight on this is what's happening. You know, and it's really great what Tony, Tim, and LBC have going on with both the USC show and also, you know, the Pac-12 show. They do a wonderful job.
And
they do a great job.
And I've got to bust Rick's chops for sticking with DirecTV and also give him some love for finally ditching them, because I ditched DirecTV so that I could watch Pac-12. People were like, well, look at their viewership. Well, just imagine if you have DirecTV, you don't get to watch Pac-12.
Well, Larry, let me tell you something. I live in Mexico City, and I find it really fine down here. I don't know what the problem is in the United States, but back down here, we get it really good.
Yeah. So, yeah, I ditched DirecTV because it was just I couldn't watch Pac-12. And granted, a lot of the lower tier games are on there. But if you're a fan of a university, there's 3 games that you're going to play. And if you're a real fan, you want to see every game your team plays. And so I would have to scramble to find friends who were going to be home and had, you know, Comcast in order to be able to watch the Utes play, because the sports bars are not playing. They all have DirecTV. All the sports bars have DirecTV. None of them had Comcast or Dish Network. They all had DirecTV. So I couldn't even go to a sports bar to watch the game in the state of Utah, in Salt Lake, where the university is planted. That's pathetic. That is largely pathetic.
Oh yeah, I mean we could do a 24-hour live stream on the evils of the Pac-12 network.
I have another show over on Golden Blue Dude here in about 10 minutes.
Go.
So let's wrap this one up.
Joey, thanks for having us.
And so let's let everybody tell Larry. First off, thanks for coming in here, buddy. Did you have any more questions for Tony?
Yeah, I just so the one thing I was the Big Ten network, when the commissioner couldn't get them, and he devised the Big Ten network and said, screw you, we'll just run our own network. Could that be the direction the Pac-12 goes with if ESPN keeps lowballing them? Fox wants nothing to do with them, and the Amazon breaks. Could they do that? Do you think that's a possibility?
So we believe at this point that the deal is basically done.
Okay.
I mean, it's not signed. There's still art, but we believe the principles of the deal are done, and that from what we are told, so I would say I wouldn't call this a projection. I would call this maybe a prediction, not a projection. We have been told, John Wilner, you know, people that know this stuff better than anybody, believe that the Pac-12's production facilities will be used for Amazon to produce live programming for them. Because the Pac-12 has phenomenal technology and phenomenal production capabilities. They just completely botched running their own network.
Okay, that was the question I had for him, Joey. That was the one last one. So,
all right, Larry, thanks for coming in, buddy. We appreciate you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Go Utes.
So I wanted to bring this up here real quick because Chris had a good comment here. He said Tony should do an audiobook podcast on the history of the Pac-12. Hey,
Thanks,
put
Chris.
it on.
We're
Put
actually
it,
working
get
on
your
that.
Patreon page and put it on there, and anybody that pays to be it on your Patreon page can watch it. Right?
We're actually, Chris, we're actually working on something with that. It's going to particularly focus on a guy named Ronnie Knox, who's one of the most fascinating characters that led to all kinds of wild convergences of sports and U.S. history. He was a phenomenal
I got
quarterback.
everybody where to find you at, man, and what you got going on.
You can just hit me up on Twitter at TJ Altimore. If you want to chat, if you guys need anything, if you're from a school and you need help, you need me to help run numbers for whatever, I'd be happy to. Would love to. I'll always love chatting engaging with you guys, and great to have so many folks from the new schools too.
Tony, Golden Blue Dude wondered if you had time, if you'd like to come over to his show there and continue the conversation with him.
Sure, we could do that. I need a quick break for some water, but yeah, we can do that.
Okay, I'll send you this link then. So Tony's going to head over to Golden Blue Dude. Tag guy, you got time to go over and join him?
I'm like Tony. I need to grab some water and I will be back. But yeah, no, I'll be happy to go over.
Right.
To
Also, it's a million degrees. So I'm taking out this pullover. Sorry.
So we'll continue this conversation over on
All
Golden
right.
Blue Dude, guys. And we appreciate everybody coming in. If you haven't hit the like button, be sure you do that on your way out. Hit that subscribe button as well. Thanks for everybody being here. We appreciate you.
Right on.